everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Rupkata Bhattacharya and you're watching my channel, which is named after me because I lack creativity. In today's video, we are going to talk about The Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. Now you see that I talk a lot about Cassandra Clare's books on my channel, and most of the time I have a lot negative to say about it than I do positive. You might be asking this question to yourself or to me. Why do you keep reading Cassandra Clare's books if you hate them so much? The answer is I read Cassandra Clare's books before I started reviewing books or before I started interacting with other people who read books, and these books are the most widely available where I live. So if you go to the bookstore or literally any place where books are sold, you will see that Cassandra Clare's books are the only ones available in the sci-fi/fantasy section. So if you wanted to read anything in this genre, your only option available was this woman's books, which are absolutely ridiculous. But we're not going to talk about all of her books today. We are just going to talk about this one. This 870 pages of simple, plain, straight suffering. We'll start with the premise of this book. I'll try to tell you as much as I can without spoiling it. I mean, at this point, I don't think even you mind spoiler. I wish I was spoiled for this book so I did not have to read it. Basic thing is it picks up where the previous book, this is the last book in a trilogy, which is the Dark Artifices trilogy. Overall, I believe it's like the 18th book or the 17th book in the entire Shadowhunter's Chronicles, and it is the most recent one if I am not wrong. No, it is not the most recent one, it is the third recent one. After this, we even had two more trilogies. One more trilogy by Cassandra Clare and another one which is coming up in the next few years. So it picks up right after its predecessor ended, The Lord of Shadows. Now The Lord of Shadows ends at a very bleak tone with a death happening. Of course, I cannot tell you whose death it is or what the death includes, but there is a death that happens, and this book deals with the aftermath of that certain death, the aftermath of two people falling in love with each other when their love is forbidden, and most of all, it is a basic Cassandra Clare book, or as I call it, fan fiction with added steps. If you read at least two novels by Cassandra Clare from two different trilogies, let's say the Mortal Instruments book 1 and the Infernal Devices book 1, you will not see any basic difference because 1, the characters are the same. 2, the writing style never improves, it stays the same. I think Cassandra Clare could write a grocery list and publishers would publish it. And 3, the plot is the same with a few added or subtracted details here and there. Maybe an extra character who was not there in the previous book with a revamped personality. Or basically, this series in particular, The Dark Artifices, is just the Mortal Instruments fanfiction, which is ironic considering the Mortal Instruments itself was Harry Potter fanfiction. And trust me, you do not want to know about that because I myself regret knowing about it. Now, why does this book suck so much? Why do I hate this book? Number 1, the pacing of this book. The book has a bad pacing. It starts off quite strong. It has a fast pacing. Few major plot points are solved in the first half of this book. It goes ahead straight. It's fast forward. We are going really good. But suddenly, towards the middle of this book, the author decides to take things a bit slower, which brings this huge break in the pacing, which is quite distracting for the reader because suddenly it demands more attention from you. Towards the beginning of this book, the book did not demand much attention from the reader. It was easy to read. You could just zoom through the pages. In a minute or two, it would take you probably 30 minutes to read 100 pages if you read at my speed. But when there is suddenly a new plot point is introduced and the part 2 of this book, it is divided in 3 sections. The part 2 of this book is quite slow, which makes the pacing weird and introduces this huge break in the attention span of the reader. It makes things feel awkward. The book feels off all of a sudden, for the lack of a better word. The pacing issue, which I was hoping would be involved would be resolved within a few pages, was not. There was this sort of up and down, a faulty line in the pacing till the end of the book. Sometimes the pacing was fast, you could read a few pages in just a minute. Sometimes the pacing was so unbearably slow, I was thinking about throwing this book out of the balcony. But unfortunately, I bought this with my money. I cannot do that. Next up, we'll talk about the characters. All of the characters are so infuriatingly annoying that this book feels like a shit show. Firstly, we have a lot of returning characters from Cassandra Clare's first book series, which was the Mortal Instruments, and the main characters in this book are just fangirls or fanboys of those characters from the previous series. They keep talking about how the other characters from the previous series, like Jace and Clary, the main characters of the Mortal Instruments, are amazing, are beautiful. They could kiss the ground that these characters walk on. For some time, it's quite annoying, but I can look apart from that. It's your own book series. You love it so much that you want to include it in another book series. Go ahead, do it. I don't care. But to me, as a reader who already hated the characters in the Mortal Instruments, it was pretty annoying. But let's not talk about that for the sake of a critical review. I'll move on to the writing style. So one thing there is with Cassandra Clare's writing style, that it is very juvenile. She focuses on descriptions and characters thinking so much that the writing style has no flavor to it, for the lack of a better word. Now, as a reader, I rely on imagery, which Cassandra Clare cannot do. She does imagery quite bad. Her writing is heavily focused on telling than it is on showing. To get immersed into one of her books takes a lot of attention, it takes a lot of patience. If you really want to enjoy one of her books and get immersed into it, you have to go in without any expectations, and if you do not have expectations, you will not be disappointed. So if you are someone with no expectations, you will not be disappointed from this one. But as someone who wants to gain something from each book I read, or at least enjoy it, this one was disappointment, but in all capital letters. Moving on to the next part of this book that I hated was that the lack of a proper antagonist, which many Cassandra Clare books suffer from. They do not have a proper antagonist at all. So we have probably three antagonists. One is a demon sorceress, something that is spoilers, so I cannot tell you. Another is a group of people who go against our main character's actions, and third, a minor character who is there, a stereotypical bitch, as you would say, a stereotypical mean girl like Regina George from Mean Girl. So she's sort of like that character, Zara Dearborn, and Zara is a wannabe who wants to be our main character but cannot do that. She is annoying. She is meant to be the major antagonist, but what Cassandra Clare only succeeds in doing is make her annoying. Now, one thing that I do hate in fantasy books is when there is no villain, when there is no antagonist who will strike fear into the hearts of reader, or in the very basic be a menace to the main characters. But in this book, none of that is available. There are no antagonists that can bring up a conflict. There is actually no conflict, because if there was few scenes of conflict, few plot points which brought conflict, but they were resolved so easily. It felt almost comical, because we spent two books in fear of this supposed big bad main character, but suddenly it takes 2 pages for that huge problem to be solved. And overall, it was pretty annoying, infuriating as a reader, because if you spend that much time invested in the defeat of one antagonist and it just happens so easily, then it almost feels like wasted time. Overall, this book was 1.5 stars for me to begin with. It was bad, it made no sense, it was comical at times to think that a book can be this badly written. Now, one thing that I do think is, as Cassandra Clare's book go from the first series to now the last series, which will come out in 2024 or 2025, the quality has reduced astoundingly. The first book could be held up to a value of literature, if I do call it. I mean, does it even count as proper literature? Not to be a snob, I love reading Cassandra Clare's books. Some of them are quite enjoyable for entertainment. But not to be a literary snob, but these books to be held up to a certain quality or to be held up to their popularity, they do not live up to their name. And the first book to the last book, there is a huge quality drop. I feel like there should be a lot of major edits made in her recent series, like Chain of Iron, a Chain of Thorns, which has not come out yet, Chain of Gold, and the other series that we have, the Eldest Curses one. There should be a lot of edits made, because at this point they just feel like money grab, putting out books just for the sake of making money with no plot in them, with no substance in them. They feel cheap nostalgia pandering for the readers who have stuck from the first book to the last book, like myself. And at this point, I am thinking about pirating her next books. I mean, I'm not enjoying them, so why should I waste my money on them? My biggest mistake was buying all three books of this from like College Street, where you get them second hands. I bought all three of them second hand without even reading the first book, which I do not recommend. If you ever start a series, you should definitely read the first book first and then buy the remaining books in the series, because 9 out of 10 times you will not like the first book enough to continue that series. So this was my rant review for The Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Comments can be literally anything, ranging from book recommendations to constructive criticism. If you want to fight me on my reviews, and do so, I do enjoy a good fight, if I do say so myself. Thank you for watching. Be safe during this pandemic. Have a great day ahead, and goodbye.